Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this Monday. We're starting the week off right today here on the Investigative Journal on this May 15th, 2017 day on our calendar. Wow. You know, I always look around for comments regarding the truth movement. Its fallacies. Some people are on the right track. Some people are disinformation agents, etc., etc. And it goes on and on and on. And really the job of most people now is to figure out who's on what side and who's telling you the truth. And there was a guy on an internet station. He calls himself, Chris White, I believe, is his name. And he says, "My rant to the truth movement." And I thought I'd play that for you. It's about 23 minutes long. And let's get somebody else's perspective here, and then we can talk about it in the second half hour. And I got a couple other things planned for you, so here we go.
This is my rant to the truth movement, the truth seekers, the patriots, whatever we're calling ourselves. I started out about 10 years ago reading Zecharia Sitchin, and that led me to David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, which led me to internet research. I was a believer in the whole 2012 paradigm and everything that went along with it. I was the picture of what a majority of the truth movement is right now. That is, that I believed 10 years ago as they believe now, which is that aliens somehow created us, genetically modified us. I believe that there were many dying and rising gods in ancient history, all of which had very similar characteristics to Jesus. And I believed that 2012 was a time of great turmoil, a pole shift and a great cleansing of people was on the horizon. I submit to you that these three key aspects are the paradigm, which is so easy to find. You don't have to look to find this. This is the base concepts that most people are born with in the truth movement. You're not a renegade for figuring that out. Do you know how hard it is to find out the general consensus of the channeled information about 2012? All you have to do is turn on the TV, watch the Discovery Channel for, an hour and a half. Watch the History Channel for an hour and a half, and you'll find all you need to know about that. You can run around telling everybody how much research you did, never realizing those people that program those shows, they have an agenda. So the real paradigm shift for me was finding out that a lot of those concepts were served on a silver platter for me to consume. Then the real research was, why would these things be important to this group that I'm fighting? The answer lies in a basic concept that most of us have figured out by now. It almost seems too simple, but it's really not. You know that this tyrannical group of elites that really truly do run things at the highest levels have infiltrated almost every organization of any power at the top levels, have a belief system. The common thing people say is, well, whether you or I believe it, it doesn't matter because they believe it. Well, let's run with that for a little bit. These people are Luciferians. Now, I'm not going to say, well, that just proves something. No, we can go on a very basic religious concept. Let's not apply any Christian dogma to it right now. Let's just say, okay, Luciferians. Okay, that's fine. Well, they also, that's just a philosophy. They do have a religion too. You can call it that. It sometimes can be just a series of rituals that they are forced under a matter of fear to take part in a lot of times. A lot of times they're forced to by their own addictions and things like that. There are high-level satanic rituals going on among the elites, and that includes child sacrifice. That includes the eating of human flesh. This includes things that we are peripherally aware of. We know they're into a lot of those things. So, and we also know that they control the newspapers and the television and the History Channel and all these things that we know and see on a day-to-day basis. They control the school system. So you can be reasonably sure that the information that they're providing is the information that they approve of. So what do we see? We see the same thing building up every day. You see those three basic concepts being taught to us. Why? Why those three concepts? Because those are the building blocks for which the New World Order will be built on. Listen, people are talking about unity. Everybody's saying, well, we need to unite. So it has a lot to do with zeitgeist addendum or whatever. We need this new socialist paradigm. Money is the problem. Money is the problem. Well, I suggest, first of all, that our problem has been the infiltration of that system that was good. We don't have capitalism right now. We only have the appearance of it. But that's really not the point. People are talking about unity while dividing us on dogmatic lines. People have said that about me for a long time, that I am dividing the truth movement. That's what I'm here to do. I'm some sort of agent, whether it's whatever it is today. I'm a Jesuit or a FBI agent or a CIA agent, and I'm here to divide us, to keep us from being united. Oh, you're going to be united. There's no doubt about that. I'm suggesting to you that the things that are suggested in Zeitgeist is just a ghost of what's coming. It's only the beginnings of a mindset that can only be possible after a huge amount of turmoil. The chaos that's going to ensue is going to be on such a level as to be able to bring in a vastly different system, one that will be a hyper-socialistic state that nobody will disagree with. How can that happen? How can that happen? It doesn't matter if the war was absolutely brutal. How can that happen? When the New World Order comes, you will think it is a good idea. You will not believe that it is what you've been fighting. You think that we are a small group of people that know about the New World Order. That's not true. We are a large group. The mainstream does believe what the mainstream is told to believe, and that is even more dangerous because they will be introduced to this new paradigm, which is going to be oddly similar to the vast majority of the paradigm of the truth movement. They're going to believe that aliens seeded us by genetic engineering. They're going to believe in a utopia based on the idea that we are nothing more than the products of genetic engineering from an alien race. There may be a religious dogma associated with it, but I will tell you this, there will be unity. We will all be united in our new understanding of our origins. We will willingly do what the New World Order has been trying to do the whole time, which is get rid of our borders, national sovereignty. Those things are just holding us back. We will be united in our hatred against Christians because, after all, they were wrong. They are the problem. They are the ones holding us back. They are the ones who all these wars and all this turmoil is because of. Let me ask you something. What if I could tell you that general idea has been provided for you and none of it's true? That not only are Christians not responsible for any of the wars operation by the Vatican. Read the New World Order. The Inquisitions were to kill Christians, were burned alive. In China right now, the Catholic churches meet openly, but the Christians meet in small house churches under the cover of night, under the threat of persecution and death. During World War II, the Nazi regime, the Catholic churches flourished, while the Christians almost outnumbered the Jews in the Holocaust. One thing that we have been told, we have never been allowed off of our leash to believe, and this is crucial, is that the Catholic Church is any different than Christianity. I've talked to so many people that will never let go of that paradigm, because if they do, everything that they believe will crumble. And emperors like Nero tried to eliminate Christianity. They were being completely wiped out, but they kept growing. It was out of the control of Rome and Rome's system. It was, every time they killed a Christian, it would make it stronger. They were deathly afraid of Christians. Just read their writings. Read their writings. It's a matter of history. Now, Rome is the Catholic Church. About 300 years, they merged. They said, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. But instead of just joining them, they merged their ancient mystery religion with the general story of the religion they couldn't control, and then they forced everybody to join. That, of course, is not Christian teaching to begin with. Christianity, true Christianity, has never been above ground until very recently, and it's going to go underground once more. If you don't believe me, go look at the anti-Christian sentiment in the new truth movement. Most of you have the nerve to call yourselves atheists. You should rightly call yourselves anti-theists, since all you really know is that you don't want God. We have been told by Satanists what to believe about Jesus. Does anybody see anything wrong with that? And the only thing that can stop them is the authority that I believe was given to us 2,000 years ago. Now, if that's true, then the New World Order, if they are the Satanists, has every reason in the world to discredit Jesus. Look, just think about trauma-based mind control. Some of you know about Operation Paperclip. Some of you know about the splitting of personalities, the creating of assassins and other jobs and people. Do you know why they tie that to satanic ritual abuse? Well, there's two reasons. One is because it also causes trauma to watch human sacrifice and other things. The sexual things that go on at those rituals cause splitting in themselves, but they can also use those rituals to attach specific types of demons to specific personalities. That does not make the entire personality demonized, but it does make one specific personality demonized. For instance, an assassin or even a sexual altar can be demonized, and they can be pushed down. Look, this is a major part of the power structure of the New World Order is multiple personality. It's plausible deniability to the nth degree. If you have a Manchurian candidate that has no idea that they are a multitude of people, each one having a trigger and a specific job that can be utilized by those that created them and placed in power, then their entire structure is based on a system. A system that is vulnerable only to one authority. You had better believe and not be so naive to think that the New World Order does not have a specific reason to discredit one religion. Look, I know that they've told us so long, and it's very politically incorrect to say, look, every truth can be true. No, it can't be. Every truth cannot be true. By definition, there can only be one truth. It doesn't have to be mine, it doesn't have to be yours, but it does have to be one. There is a right and wrong when it comes to truth about the nature of reality. And I suggested to you that this is not peripheral. This is not a minor thing. This is the thing. You have to decide what to do with that before you can make your decisions about the minor elements of this. Let me explain what I mean. They've told us that there were many dying and rising gods, that Horus is the same as Krishna, is the same as Attis, is the same as Mithras, and they're all the same as Jesus. Well, there's no evidence of that till about 150 AD when a lot of these stories were changed. 150 AD, do you know how that's 120-something years after Jesus Christ lived and died? And I know that the Truth Movement has told us that Jesus never existed, which is ridiculous. I mean that in a very scientific way. They've told you flat out that there's no evidence for Jesus. They've never told you about the Roman historians, the Greek historians, the satirists, the Jewish historians. They've never told you about the literary works, all of which were, in a lot of cases, extremely anti-Jesus, anti-Christian. And it begs the question, if they hated this guy so much, and they were only in a short time period window where they could have easily known for at least more certain than we could 1900 years later, they could have easily said, why do they even believe in this myth? The Christians made up a personality that never existed. No, they didn't say that. Time after time after time, historians that you're not allowed to know about said he wasn't the Son of God. His miracles were parlor tricks. They had every excuse in the book, but they never, ever said he didn't exist. They tried every excuse in the book, contradicting themselves sometimes in the same sentence, trying to find a reason to explain away what happened. If these are historical accounts, then this guy would have made quite an impact. And that's what we find. That's the reason it spread like wildfire, because that's the reason people would go to be nailed to a stake and set on fire by their own free will, when all they had to do was say, no, he didn't exist. But they didn't. Why? It's because it's true. It's because he did exist. And that almost everybody that went to the stake had a chance to spare their life. So what I'm saying is, if they're lying to you, you don't have to believe in Jesus. But if you want to be honest with yourself, you do have to reject him on a basis of an informed opinion. You can't just reject him anymore on just Michael Tsarian or Jordan Maxwell or Chari S. or David Icke saying he didn't exist, don't go look for it. He didn't exist. Zeitgeist told me he didn't exist. I don't have to worry about it. He didn't exist. I don't have to worry about it. He was the same as Horus. Everybody knows that. We all know that, don't we? Don't you know that? Yes. You know that? Yes. Look, that's it. All of us truthers know that he didn't exist. No. I'm not saying that everyone that has told you that is in on it by any means. This has been a very, very well-placed propaganda piece. After all, these Satanists have been in power for a long time. So, yeah, you can't use that. You can say, okay, well, he did exist. Okay, I can see that. It's not. I see that the most trained atheists in the debates don't argue that. I see that they have other arguments when they debate intelligent Christians. So maybe there is something to it. Okay, there was a guy named Jesus and he did exist. Okay, and okay, sure, it does seem like this mystery religion tried very, very hard to incorporate their sun worship into Christianity at about 125, 150 AD, which really started taking off about 400 AD, which became the Gnostic Catholic Church. Okay, I see the difference there, and I see that the Catholic Church killed more Christians than all the Roman emperors combined. I see that that's very well documented. The Catholic Church, if nothing else, kept extremely good records of their killings of Christians and why they did it. I also see that the Inquisitions, I can't believe anymore, were just running around killing witches, because they were started and ended with killing Christians that wouldn't believe the Gnostic version of Christianity, but instead believed what they were, the little parchments of piece of paper that they found or were given or bought with all their money. If the Bible is such a control mechanism, how come the Catholic Church for 1,600 years made it illegal to read those parchments? How come all the masses were said in Latin? It was illegal to know what the Bible said. It wasn't until the 17th century that people started reading it and saying, hey, you know what? This says almost everything different than what you guys have been saying. So they broke off into what was called the Protestant Reformation. It was a good thing, but not as far of a break that they probably should have made. You're not supposed to look at those things. You're just supposed to believe. It all helps you believe that the Bible was written to control your mind. It helps you believe not to read it. Well, I'll tell you this. If you go read protocols for how to train an Illuminati, if you will, slave, how to program the personalities, read some of the protocols. Read some of the material from Svali, or some of the material from Fritz Springmeier, or check out Russ Dizdar. Russ is one of the only people that have successfully deprogrammed hundreds of multiples. Directly from the system, some of them just from covens, some of them very high-level military, chosen ones, as they call them. Programming is very clear. They have programs that are called revulsion therapy. They have programs that make them, every time they open the Bible, feel nauseous, that they see the words backwards and upside down. They have had programs where, when they were children, they would have them tortured and beaten, and then they would tell them to call on Jesus, and then they would have an actor come in dressed as Jesus that would beat them and do awful things to them. And they would tell them to call on Satan, and Satan would come in and untie them and hug them and give them candy. These people are extremely concerned about how you view a man that lived 2,000 years ago. There's no way around that. There is no way around that. You can reject him and continue the way that you are, but you have to do it on the facts. If you are a real member of the truth movement, if you are a truth seeker, and not just a dogma seeker, not just a presupposition patter. People tell me that I'm dividing the truth movement. If you want to believe lies, then I am dividing that, because I don't want.
Okay, I have to take a break. He only got about 30 seconds left. I think he made his point. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And since we are searching for the truth, I thought in this half hour I'd discuss Jesuits, Jews, and Freemasons, and turn to someone who put out a pretty good video. Haven't listened to it in its entirety, but let's listen to, and he calls himself Joggler66. Here we go.
Hello and welcome everybody to a new video from Joggler66, Hour of the Truth. This one is called Jesuits, Jews, and Freemasons. A title that I have not chosen for myself, but that is the first chapter of the new book I start to read today, with this first chapter called Behind the Dictators, from Leo Herbert Lehman, written in 1942. It is a factual analysis of the relationship of the Nazi fascism and Roman Catholicism. This book contains 12 chapters, as I've already said in my teaser video that you've probably seen. And now I'm going to read to you the first chapter, Jesuits, Jews, and Freemasons. It is impossible to understand fully what has been taking place in the world for the past 25 years. So keep in mind, this book was written 1942. The last 25 years, so that means from the last World War, the First World War, during Second World War, this one was written. Unless we are able to grasp the underlying significance of what appears on the surface, it is necessary to penetrate behind the scenes of day-to-day happenings and examine thoroughly
the active forces and planned objectives which are responsible for all that has come to pass so quickly in the past few years. In the 19th century, the 19th century left us deplorably weak in true knowledge of the history of the state-church conflicts. The facts of human development since the Reformation have become so inextricably tangled that we have ceased to try to unravel them. We content ourselves in America with a mere superficial knowledge of events, and the conclusions arrived at, far from helping us to get at the real truth, only drive us farther away from an understanding of the real meaning of these events. Yeah, reading this in 2016, of course, this embodies also the superficial knowledge that many people have of the 9/11 2001 attacks in United States of America. Of course, a lot of people are searching for the perpetrators of that event behind the Jews and the Freemasons and not the Jesuits. So you will see that this book is really going to be an exposure of the Jesuits, and that's why I think it is appropriate to read this to you after I've read Rulers of Evil, and where you already saw how powerful the Jesuits in the United States of America were from the beginning even. Too much emphasis has been placed upon the mere economic aspect of the world situation, exactly as after 9/11. The ideological and theoretical origins of Nazi fascism, as a consequence, have been almost entirely overlooked. Research is necessary to show where social, political, and religious conflicts cross one another. There is abundance of incontestable proof, not conspiracy theory, but incontestable proof, that the forces of religion, as represented by the Roman Catholic Church, have succeeded in dominating the political and social field, and that there exists a close bond between them and the origins, methods, and objectives of the whole Nazi fascist movement in Europe. Furthermore, this domination has already spread to America. History proves that in every attempt made during the past half-century, much longer, much longer than the last half-century. History proves that in every attempt made during the half-past century against the liberal progress of mankind, the Jesuit order, as the leader of the Catholic action, has played a decisive role. We can go even so far as to state that Nazi fascism had its origin in the Society of Jesus, and that, like other movements in the past analogous to fascism today, it was planned to serve the traditional aims of the disciples of Ignatius Loyola. Here I'm going to read to you a little quote from Civiltà Cattolica, which is the house organ of the Jesuits, and that states, quote, "Fascism is the regime that corresponds most closely to the concepts of the Church of Rome." Unquote. So, no conspiracy theory, out of the horse's mouth itself. They say that fascism is the regime that corresponds most closely to the concepts of the Church of Rome, from an official magazine from the Society of Jesus called Civiltà Cattolica. Look it up for yourself if you don't believe it. As long as this reverse side of the conspiracy against democratic liberalism goes undetected, fascism will survive. The defenders of democratic ideology will not be victorious until they come out openly against their real enemy, the Knights of the Black Crusade, also called the Society of Jesus. The Jesuits were once irrevocably expelled from the nations of Europe and from the Catholic Church itself by Pope Clement XIV in 1773. But you remember from the book reading Rulers of Evil on my channel that we have learned that this banishment of the Jesuit order was planned all along by the then General Lorenzo Ricci to secularize the order, and of course to fulfill God's prophecy of the deadly wound in Revelation 13, the Jesuit military order of the Vatican being part of the head that receives a wound, as it were wounded to death, as we can read in Revelation 13. And the only refuge they could find during their 40 years of banishment was with the impious Catherine of Russia, and they were also protected by the Prussian government under Frederick II of Prussia. Sworn to obey and defend the Pope in all matters, they were hard put to it, even as Jesuits, to find a way out of the dilemma of being protégés of a monarch who thumbed her nose at the Pope, in order to protect them from his wrath. Not to be outdone, the Jesuits politely and diplomatically protested to Catherine for thus disobeying the Pope, and having thereby satisfied their requirements of their oath, where you can read, "My son, heretofore you have been taught to act the dissembler." That is exactly the point, because the end justifies the means. Having thereby satisfied the requirements of their oath, they proceeded with a clear conscience to accept her hospitality. The truth of the matter is that the Jesuits are not so much sworn to protect any individual pope as such, no, therefore they have the Swiss Guard, but rather the institution of the papacy, the biblical, historical, and prophetic Antichrist. The Jesuits are the soldiers of hell, or, as stated earlier here, the Knights of the Black Crusade. By this Jesuitical distinction, they hold themselves free to resist any pope who fails to follow their dictates, nor would they lament if such a pope were providentially speeded on his way to heaven. It is they, in fact, who comprise the papacy. Their unalterable aim is to restore the nations of the world to the control of the Roman Catholic Church. As recently as 1886, of course recently seen from the year 1942, the public press spoke frankly and fearlessly about the menacing tactics of the Jesuits to secure this world control by the papacy. The New York Tribune of September 19th of that year, in a dispatch from Rome reporting the serious illness of Pope Leo XIII and his subsequent rapid recovery, states that the London Times referred editorially to the report that Pope Leo's close approach to death, quote, was due to poison administered by the Jesuits, unquote. It relates that after his sudden recovery, the Pope established a new policy in the Church towards the Jesuits, quote, and that this new line of policy is the price at which he was able to procure the antidote, which they alone could supply, unquote. The Tribune report goes on to say, quote, within 3 days of the recovery from his illness, the Pope issued a bull re-establishing all the privileges, immunities, exceptions, and indulgences formerly accorded to the Society of Jesus, and declaring null and void all documents which his predecessors have ever written against the order. The fact that Leo XIII restored the order to what it was in the days of its supreme power is more than enough to paralyze all hopes of a peaceful determination of the conflict between the Vatican and the Quirinal. The Quirinal is the Italian civil authority and government, for the Jesuits constitute the belligerent element of Catholicism and are thoroughly intransigent on the subject of the temporal power of the world escaping from the control of the Church, unquote. Now, I just read you a part from a bull that Leo XIII wrote, and I could not find that bull in my research. So if any of my listeners is able to provide me with that bull, I'd like to check it out and have a look at it too. Or if anybody finds the archives of the New York Tribune article mentioned here, that would be interesting also. I could not find that online in my research in preparation of reading the book. It doesn't mean that I doubt it. It's just nice to read the original sources sometimes. So if anybody feels himself called to help me with that research and provide links that I could look that up online, I would be grateful, of course. Now Mr. Lehman continues here. Far be it from us to doubt the sincerity of the Jesuits and their followers in believing that the control of the world by the Catholic Church is the only solution for the ills of mankind. They are welcome to their conviction and are free in the United States to propagate their teaching and carry out their activities towards that end. The traditional manner in which they carry out their design, however, should be disturbing to all who strive to sustain the democratic ideology and the principles of freedom and tolerance cherished so highly in this country. In order to obtain their objective, they spend all their energies, as Nazi fascism does too, against the two forces they consider inimical to their cause, which are Judaism and Freemasonry. From its first founding, the Jesuit order has battled by every means against these two, because they are the chief advocates of tolerance and freedom for all. By the ruthless elimination of Jews and Freemasons in so many countries of Europe, Nazi fascism has merely effected what the Jesuits have schemed and worked for during many centuries. I'm gonna make a little quote here, a little note, better said. You have to keep in mind here that Freemasonry is the Protestant arm of the Jesuits. So even they are, quote-unquote, opposed to it on the one hand, they lead it on the other. True enforcement of the Jesuit oath doctrine, nothing else. They always control all sides. That's why they are in full control. There is no real opposition whatsoever anywhere except the true body of Christ. And those are today very, very few. In France, Germany, Hungary, Poland, Spain, Belgium, and Italy, the Jesuits for many years before Mussolini and Hitler led the fight against the Jews and Freemasons. In each of these countries it was a Catholic priest, prototypes of Father Coughlin. And Father Coughlin, if you want to learn more about him, I will put a link from Wikipedia in the description box of the video that you can look at it. And when you read between the lines, when you study that article on Wikipedia, you learn that he was also controlled opposition all the way. But continue reading here. In each of these countries it was a Catholic priest, prototypes of Father Coughlin, who was the spearhead of fascist attacks on both Judaism and Freemasonry. In France, it was Jesuit Father Dulac, with his Ligue Nationale Antisémitique de France, which means in English, the National Anti-Semitic League of France. In Germany, the Jesuit Fathers Overmans, Muckermann, Loeffler, and Pachtler. In Hungary, it was Father Adalbert Banger and Father Bresciano in Italy. All of these worked under the banner of positive Christianity and Christian Front to fight Judaism and Freemasonry in order to get the millions of unsuspected non-Catholics to serve their ends. Well, you have to ask yourself when reading about positive Christianity and Christian Front, what kind of Christianity the author is talking about here? Certainly not biblical Christianity, but rather Roman Catholicism. They all proclaimed a crusade for the Christian reformation of states and of the world. Father Overman states that, quote, the rock of positive moral Christian law, unquote, is the best foundation for the creation of organizations capable of reuniting the members of all Christian religions. And this quote comes from For the Jesuits. You have to understand, Christian is synonymous with Roman Catholic. So in this quote from Father Overmans, where he states, the rock of positive moral Christian law is the best foundation for the creation of organizations capable of reuniting the members of all Christian religions. Positive Christian law means Roman Catholic law, means canon law, and no law a Bible-believing Christian ever wants to be under. Father Hugger, S.J., meaning Society of Jesus, shortly after the establishment of the German Republic, wrote in Stimme der Zeit, means Voices of the Time, June 1919 on page 171, quote, "We are facing a ruinous state of affairs. Once again, the work of restoration will have to be accomplished by youth. Will the congregations of Mary not go forth for the third time as the instrument of reconstruction chosen by divine providence?" Unquote. Now, Hitler also identified his National Socialist Party with positive Christianity. In his Mein Kampf, he states that he imbibed his anti-Semitism and his hatred of Masonry from the Catholic Christian Social Party of Luger, then mayor of Vienna, when he went there as a young man. Quote, "By combating the Jews, I am helping the work of the Lord," Hitler says. This Christian reform of states, which is also the subject of the late Pope's famous encyclical Quadragesimo Anno, and this encyclical of Pope Pius XI stands on the reconstruction of the social order from 1931, is nothing else but the establishment of the fascist corporative state in which neither Jews nor Freemasons will have any part. Needless to say, it is also anti-Protestant. The Jesuit fathers Pacta and Mockerman proclaimed the fascist doctrines of Nazism before Hitler was heard of. Father Muckerman wrote prolifically in favor of racial eugenics and sterilization, and continued to do so even in spite of the condemnation of sterilization in the encyclical Casti Connubii of Pope Pius XI in 1930. And this encyclical Casti Connubii is from Pope Pius XI on the Christian marriage. You can look that up. I found that online. Jules Michelet, the great French historian, in his Histoire de France, History of France, and the German historian Wilhelm Herzog stressed the fact that those who directed the anti-Semitism at the time of the Dreyfus affair depended upon the instructions and, above all, upon the financial support of the Jesuits. If you want to learn more about the Dreyfus affair, I will also provide a Wikipedia link to that, and there you can get more information on the Dreyfus affair that started in the late 1890s in France. The Croix de Feu, or the Cross of Fire in English, and the Parti Français, French party in France, and the Catholic Rexist party in Belgium also had the support of the Jesuits. The Libre Parole, anti-Semitic daily newspaper, was founded by Jesuit money, and its treasury was constantly replenished by them. The anti-Semitic leaders of the Dreyfus affair, which was a plot against the French Republic, were products of Jesuit schools or had Jesuit confessors. In France as elsewhere, anti-Semitism and anti-Masonic campaigns took the form of integrated nationalism. They called for expulsion of Jews and Freemasons, the overthrow of the French Republic, and the setting up of a nationalist state. Hendlein's party in Czechoslovakia likewise preached the doctrines of Ottmar Spann, the theoretician of a cooperative state and the protege of the Jesuits. One of the first acts of Father, now Monsignor, which is translated My Lord, even a higher title than Father, of Monsignor Joseph Tiso, when he became Nazi Premier of Slovakia, was the destruction of all Masonic lodges. If you want to learn a little bit more about Joseph Tiso, I spoke thereof in my Hour of the Truth, episode number 47 about. You can look that up in the archives of the playlist of Hour of the Truth. Now the author continues about his memory Mein Kampf from Hitler, but you have to understand that that book actually was written by Jesuit quote-unquote Father Stempfler. It was ghost-written by a Jesuit. It was not written by Adolf Hitler. He just signed for that book. So in his Mein Kampf, Hitler repeats the principles of the Jesuits against Judaism and Freemasonry like a well-trained parrot. And that's exactly everything Hitler always has been. He was a trained parrot of the Jesuits. He was controlled by the Roman Catholic Church from the beginning, being a Roman Catholic from birth until death, not even excommunicated. But that's something we will go into a little bit later. But he just parroted what other people wrote for him. It's like Obama. Do you see him talking once without a teleprompter? And he doesn't have any idea what he has to talk about. And Hitler was just the same. He maybe didn't need a teleprompter, he put all the speeches in his head, but they were not his. He was, from the beginning, a Jesuit Roman Catholic puppet. All that he says against the Jews and the revolution in Germany after the war, about Zionism, Jewish exploitation of indecency and obscenity in literature, movies, theater, and the press, their part in the organization of vice, prostitution, and white slavery, was borrowed almost word for word from the official writings of the Jesuits. Everything he says, likewise, against the Freemasons, their fight for religious tolerance, their efforts to break down racial and religious barriers, as well as their alleged disloyalty to Germany during the World War I, is in agreement with both the teaching of the Jesuits and of the popes in their encyclicals against Masonry. The Jesuit Father Bia, shortly after the revolution in Germany, wrote the following, quote, "The part played by many Jews at the time of the revolution, the Zionist movement, all this should be a lesson to those who take their religion and their country seriously to put themselves resolutely on the defensive. The increase of anti-Semitic literature and anti-Semitic organizations is evidence that the..."
Okay, I have to break it off. We're all out of time. And come back tomorrow. We'll continue on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.